And how do you think like that shaped you like growing up? Because going through those hard times, a lot of people would never even know any adversity close to that, where you have to like start completely over. You're completely vulnerable, going to
Yeah,
a whole new country. That must have been really tough, but shaped you and shaped your whole life up to this point.
yeah. People ask me all the time, like, what's formed some of my philosophies about training. Um, it's hard to say, one specific thing, but if you've experienced real life hardship, you know, hardship in the gym is not really hardship. It's freaking holiday, right? Um, Actually, I was talking to somebody in the gym the other day. I was saying how like some of these Eastern, Europeans, the bloc, the Westerners look at that, type of training methods, and people think, Jesus Christ, you have to be nuts to do that. Well, their life is pretty rough, man, as it is, and so you see somebody training in any other different way, man. Like it's, you know, just people that struggled all their life, and then they go to the gym, and it's like for them, it's just a piece of cake to do some of the things that they do because life is hard. But what's the quote? I can't remember who said it. It's really hard to sleep in silk and wake up 4 o'clock in the morning and go for a run when you wake up out of a bed like that. But when you wake up on the floor and you're cold, it's not too much of a fall in comfort to go for a run in the middle of the winter. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, rough environment kind of breeds rough people. I think certainly there's been a lot more people out there who have had harder upbringings, but certainly that's had an impact on me. I'll be lying to you that I grew up a normal kind of life. I did, lots of death and suffering around me. From hearing mortar fire as a freaking 8-year-old, knocking the fridge over, to watching a tank roll by, and people with machine guns walking around. Like that's not normal living, right? But as a 9-year-old, you see that, you're like, that's how stuff is, man. Like you don't really know what normal is, you know what I mean? But then you come to Adelaide and you're walking around, you're like, Jesus Christ, man, this looks like there's no one around, There's no tanks around, man. What's going on? That kind of mentality. But I don't know. As I kind of grew up, I kind of realized what normal was, and then you kind of relax a little bit and you kind of learn to do the normal way.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like even here, it's, things are pretty stable. Life is pretty good. And, a lot of people don't know what hardships are, and they don't know about, difficulty. So it makes you weak. It makes you mentally weak. So comparing that to training, it's like, okay, that's fun going to train every day. That's not, your mentality towards it is completely different from everybody else, because it's like you've seen things being as bad as they could be. And a lot of people never see that. They have all the comforts. We have all the technology. Life is not a struggle. So everybody else thinks it's crazy, but you're like, no, I've done way worse. I've been through way worse. This is fun. This is enjoyable. It's an escape. And I think
Yeah,
that's kind of the
absolutely.
difference.
The funny thing is, like, I've watched a lot of sport as I grew up. And if you look at some, like, for instance, like I follow NBA mostly, you see a lot of these guys who are like superstars in the league right now. A lot of them have come up through a really rough time. Like some of these guys came from the street, didn't have a lot. The term sugar water for some of these guys that grew up on like basically, hardship, And, is that a coincidence that some of these guys who kind of grew up in kind of a rough way climbed to have the success that they have? It's the hunger, man. These people are hungry. Like if you go and play against a guy that's, has trouble thinking about where the next meal is going to come from, and there's a loose ball on the court, and it's me against him or some other guy against him, it's like, man, he's going to be, it's a different type of hunger, man. So this is why I always feel like if you look at Maradona, if you look at like so many stories come to mind where like these people are like proper poverty, man. And so for them it's kind of like a different work ethic. It's not like life is hard, man. And so training is easy. Like it's just you just put more into it because your pain receptors are just all whack because you're used to just being in discomfort all the time. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting outside of the comfort zone, like you have to push yourself. You have to go through some kind of struggle to to grow as a person and get anywhere in life. So I think
Yeah.
from that aspect, like doing something difficult like you've been doing, it helps you grow as a person, not just in the gym, but mentally. Like you can, if I can do this, I can do anything. And that sort of mindset, because I've noticed even myself at times, if I don't have like a difficult goal that I'm going after, I feel like I get soft. I get like too relaxed and complacent, and I don't feel the energy or feel alive at all. And I'm sure,
Yeah.
a lot of people know what that's like. You just feel dead inside where you're like, I'm just coasting. So,
Yeah. There's no growth out of comfort, man. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I have a tendency to be extreme in the way I think and the way I kind of approach things. But I always feel like, man, like I always tell my wife, man, she always thinks we always kind of disagree on this. I say to people around me all the time, like every time you wake up, man, you should have something planned in your day where you're going to have definite discomfort. Like you need to plan it because right now, like my life is sweet, man. Like I just described to you a situation where I kind of came from. Australia's nice, man. Comfort, we've made it, man. Like it doesn't matter how much we have or we don't have, we have all the basics. So I always tell people around, man, you gotta like plan some sort of discomfort, like have like a cold shower or wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and train or do something that's gonna make you really uncomfortable because that's gonna be a palate cleanser for this. I mean, check this shit out. Freaking leather couch, man. Fucking awesome, man, you know? But like if I didn't go to the cold shower, you won't really like feel how nice this shit is, man. Like
yeah.
it's awesome. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like the contrast is what makes us realize what happiness truly is. Because I have images in my head about the tank rolling by, and I'm like, shit, man, like I can see birds flying by here, you know? So it's like a contrast, but people, they go from comfort to more comfort to more comfort, upgrading all the time. And then all of a sudden, this couch is a piece of shit. And I've had this couch for 15 years, man. It's a piece of shit. Right? There's better shit out there now. But, once you go in the cold shower and you come out, you're like, oh, my Lord, this is like, I made it, man. Look at me, man. That's what it's like,
It just makes you appreciate things more. Life feels more real, and you feel better about things when you're pushing yourself. Like it's 3-4 days a week. I'll run now anywhere from like 10 to 12 miles. Like I have 4 days, 3-4 days a week, 10 to 12 mile run. It takes like 2 hours almost. And that's not necessarily enjoyable, but it's like, I'm not like getting like, oh, I want to run. It's like, no, it's freaking hard. I'm doing it at 6 a.m., before most people even wake up. And it's like that challenge, it makes me grow. It pushes me out of my comfort zone because running doesn't come easy to me. I'm 220 pounds. I'm 100 kg. Like it's not easy. Yeah. And it's the same way. Like it's just, you have to have a goal. You have to have something to challenge you. And now that I'm not like lifting as heavy as I once was, I'm not, deadlifting 900 pounds. It's like I'm still lifting, but I need these other pursuits. Like I want to run a marathon. I want to do it in a fast time and maybe 100-mile race. And this stuff is very difficult. And it's like I just want to grow and I want to push myself. I want to continue to challenge myself. And it's exactly what you said, because when you get done with that kind of thing, after you're exhausted and you've been running for 2 hours, you're like, everything is more satisfying. Everything is more rewarding. You can appreciate the little things in life. Like you sleep differently that night. You just, everything feels better. You're not taking for granted. That's probably the biggest thing that I'm taking away from, like, you don't take things for granted. You know how difficult things can be. And you no longer like, oh, it's just a bed. It's just a house. It's just a roof over my head. It's just food. Like you appreciate things so much more. You're so much more grateful. That's how I think it is.